Good evening, South Florida, and thank you for joining us for our Voters Special. I'm Elliot Rodriguez.
And I'm Lauren Pastrana. Tonight, Republican voters across Florida are choosing their presidential nominee. And even though former President Donald Trump is already the presumptive nominee, there are also community races that sent voters to the polls today.
Now, that includes several mayoral and commissioner races here in South Florida. We're bringing you team coverage of today's local elections. We have CBS News Miami's Joan Murray in Broward County.
But first, we take you to Miami-Dade County. Chelsea Jones at Miami-Dade Elections headquarters in Doral with a look at voter turnout there. Chelsea?
Yeah, well, so 16% of voters cast ballots in today's elections, which Miami-Dade elections officials say that's right on par with a presidential preference primary where roughly 15 to 20% of people usually show up and participate. I want to show you this map now. There are roughly 1.4 million registered voters in total for Miami-Dade County. Around 17,000 of them early vote and almost 40,000 vote by mail. Now, in the county today, there are two towns, that's Surfside and South Miami, which are holding special elections. So there, you don't have to be a registered Republican to participate. You can also be a Democrat. In Surfside, there are roughly 5,500 residents there registered to vote. And according to Miami-Dade elections, less than 1,500 of those actually voted in 2022. Now, in total today, over 71,000 people voted so far, as per the elections website, around 446,000 voters. And looking ahead to the general election, there are some reminders that officials want to keep in mind. They say that early voting is going to be your best bet if you want to cast a vote. But if you would like to vote by mail, they say there are some changes for you to be aware of.
So you must renew your vote by mail request in 2024. If you'd like to vote by mail, you go onto our website, call the office, or you can submit a form to us because all requests expire.
So the high-profile race in Surfside is that race for mayor. You have current mayor Shlomo Danziger going up against former mayor Charles Burkett. And at last check, that race is really close. We'll take a look at those election results coming up in about 10 minutes. I'll send it back to you.
All right, we'll take it back, Chelsea. Thank you. We'll check back in with you in a little while.
And our team coverage now moves to Broward County, where Pembroke Pines is electing a new mayor. Frank Ortis has been the mayor there for a couple of decades now. Here's how the race is shaping up right now. Looks like Angelo Castillo has a significant lead with 57% of the vote right now.
You see 24.7% going to Catherine Minnis and 18% of the vote going to Brandon Carrero. The winner will replace Frank Ortis, who's been the mayor of Pembroke Pines for nearly 3 decades. And the other race that we're following is for District 3 Commissioner. You can see Jay Schwartz has 57% of the vote. Catherine Minnis, 24.7%, and Brandon Carrero is in 3rd place. Glenn Theobald has 38.2%. This is in District 3. Maria Rodriguez with 38%. That one is neck and neck. There's a handful of votes separating them. Chris Zadie with 20% and Ace Almeria with 3.8% of the vote.
And important to note right now, it's showing 23% of the precincts there reporting, so not a lot of numbers completely in right now, but a lot of those early voting tallies are what we're seeing. And CBS News Miami's Joan Murray is in Lauderdale-by-the-Sea tonight.
Now, she's looking at voter turnout in Broward County, as well as why the mayoral race in Pembroke Pines is such a unique one for that city. Joan?
Yeah, a lot of interest in these races, as you pointed out. Here in Lauderdale-by-the-Sea, there's a mayoral race and 2 commission seats. But west in Pembroke Pines, of course, a very big mayoral race, as Frank Ortis is not on the ballot. He's been on the ballot. He's been in politics nearly 30 years, and he chose to retire this year. So everybody watching that race to see who will become the new mayor of Pembroke Pines. And when I spoke to the Broward election supervisor, Joe Scott, today, he told me that there was a lot of interest, probably more turnout in places like Pembroke Pines and Lauderdale-by-the-Sea because of these local races. Pembroke Pines, of course, you have the mayor and 2 commission seats. So I spoke to Joe Scott, and he said that this race today, probably par for the course, since this election was happening later in the year. Sometimes when Florida has had this early election, it's been earlier in the year, and therefore maybe a little better turnout, but it was par for the course today. So let's listen to what Joe Scott had to say.
With the cities that are having those municipals, there's a lot more activity, there's a lot more people showing up than we do in the other places. But as far as what we expect the overall turnout to be, overall we're looking at about 15% generally across the board. So it's never that great even for municipals.
Never that great even for municipals, so about an overall turnout of 15%. We're getting results in, and we're going to have more for you in just a few minutes. But reporting live for now in Lauderdale-by-the-Sea, Joan Murray, CBS News, Miami.
Okay, Joan, thanks a lot. We'll check back with you in a little while and take a look at why Lauderdale-by-the-Sea commission races could have a broad impact for beachgoers.
Yeah, and right now we want to bring in CBS News Miami's Jim DeFede. All right, so we're talking about turnout. We weren't expecting anything too large. A lot of municipal races maybe would bring more people in those specific cities, but overall, what's your takeaway with this turnout?
Well, let's broaden this out, because I think this is an important discussion that we often don't have here. You know, if you look at the state of local governments across South Florida, I would say the state of local governments is not very healthy. If you look at what's going on, for instance, in Dade County, in the city of Miami, you have chaos on Miami Beach. There's attempts to recall the mayor in Coral Gables. Doral just fired its city manager. Homestead fired their city manager. So we're seeing a lot of chaos on the local level, and in part, one of the reasons that occurs is because voters in those communities aren't really turning out to vote when there is decisions to be made. And so, you know, low voter turnout, I understand. There's not a lot of reasons people feel to come out, but when we don't really pay attention to the local races, when we don't turn out for those local races, then that leads to a situation where you start seeing chaos in these various municipalities, and then we don't really start to notice them until they become a crisis. And I think more and more we're seeing a crisis in cities across South Florida.
And turnout can make such a big difference. For example, in Surfside, I don't know exactly what the electorate is there, but it is, what, 3 digits,
Well, I'm looking at, I'm looking right now, I just was refreshing, you know, the early and absentee votes are in, the day of voting hasn't counted yet, and Shlomo Danziger is ahead by 39 votes. 39 votes in Surfside. So that tells you, you know, if you're sitting in Surfside and you don't think your vote counts, it can, you know, and so that's where we get lost. And so if they do have a low voter turnout in Surfside, and then the mayoral candidate who they don't really like gets elected, or commissioners, there is an old feeling that says if you don't vote, you shouldn't be allowed to complain. What we have is a lot of people who complain but don't vote.
That don't show up. Yeah, of course, those small municipal elections are very important to our everyday lives and how we live and interact with people in our community. But the big headline here is the presidential preference primary. We want to take a look now at the presidential race. As we mentioned, Florida Republican voters also had their presidential primary today. Because President Joe Biden is running unopposed, there is no presidential primary election in Florida for Democrats.
So here's a look at those GOP presidential primary numbers from polling locations across South Florida. Let's get them on your screen. Presidential poll by age done by FIU, 18 to 34-year-olds pick Joe Biden, 37%, Donald Trump, 54%. This is a presidential poll that's done by FAU. It's not election results today, folks. 35 to 49-year-olds trending towards Trump right now. That's a phenomenon, Jim DeFede, that we've been seeing in these polls, that more and more people say that they're supporting Donald Trump. All right, here are the numbers that we want to look at. 80% of the vote in the presidential primary in Florida going to Donald Trump. Absolutely no surprise.
Let's talk about, though, that we are seeing that 14.5% of the vote as of right now going to Nikki Haley. More than 146,000 Florida voters saying that that is their preference, even though she is no longer in the race. A good chunk also going to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis as well. Is that to send a message?
I do think that you can generally assume that anyone who's voting for Nikki Haley at this point is doing it as a protest towards Donald Trump. 15%, not a very strong number for Nikki Haley, but a good chunk. I mean, we've seen it higher in other contests around the country, you know, and so yes, I think that you can say from this, based on these numbers, Donald Trump receiving 80% plus of the vote in the state of Florida right now. That's probably likely to grow because some of the more rural communities will come in later, and that'll tend to favor. So I would expect Nikki Haley to probably finish around 12 or 13% when the votes are County. That's not a strong showing for her. Florida is Trump country. That's the whole point.
And Jim, we should point out that in Florida, for this primary, you had to be a registered Republican, because in other states, there were Democrats who were casting their vote for Nikki Haley or other candidates.
Yeah, and I want to, one of the things we want to do is show you a graph of why Republicans have such a commanding presence now. One of the things that we wanted to look at was how the demographics have changed in terms of who's registered as voters since 2012. And the reason I chose 2012 to follow this was because that's when Barack Obama won the state of Florida. And what you see is in 2012, Democrats, represented by the blue line, had almost a 600,000, a 558,000 vote advantage over Republicans. Today, look at the disparity. Democrats, now are down by more than 850,000 votes compared to registered Republicans in the state. That's why Florida is no longer considered a swing state, why Florida is a red state now. We've been seeing this evolution over time, and that graph really represents it.
Well, we're not in play, and it seems like the Democratic National Committee is just throwing their hands up in the air and saying, we're not going to spend money in Florida because, as you say, Florida is a red state. Two
big things that came out in the last week. In the last month, Joe Biden announced about $250 million in reservation TV ad buys. None of it in Florida. The Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee came out with about $230 million in what they project to spend over the next several months in 7 states, Florida not one of them. If you want, you can have people talk about Florida as being in play, but if you really want to understand what states are in play, look where they're spending money.
But Jim, could the polling change that? If we see suddenly the polling is a little tighter, could the Democrats say, oh, we better pay some attention, put some money into Florida,
you could see
maybe
that,
we could win it.
You could see that. That's a possibility, but the problem is that in both the presidential race and in the Senate races, the Democrats are playing defense in so many areas. Joe Biden got elected to the White House without winning the state of Florida. His recipe for winning re-election, it doesn't really take him through Florida. It takes him again through Georgia, Arizona, New Hampshire. Those are the states, Pennsylvania, that he's got to devote his time and resources to. Yes, you'll see Joe Biden come down here because you don't want to never come to Florida. For one thing, you come down here, raise money here, right?
And especially in the bigger cities, Miami, or in the college towns especially as well. He does well in Alachua County. He does well in where Orlando is, in Tampa, Broward, and Miami-Dade to an extent. But so there's still going to be some focus in those areas.
Look, later in the show, I'm going to play you a little bit of sound, not now, a little bit later in the show, we're going to talk about, what Nikki Haley, the chair of the Florida Democratic Party, sees. And realistically, this is going to have to be for Democrats to build themselves out of that hole that we showed in that graphic. That's not something you do in one election cycle. That's something you have to do over several election cycles.
All right, Jim, thank you.
We will check back in, and next we're going to look at Surfside's mayoral race.
Plus, the big decision tonight's elected Lauderdale-by-the-Sea commissioners will have to make. Stay with us.
Welcome back to our CBS News Miami Voters Decide Stream Special. I'm Lauren Pastrana.
And I'm Elliot Rodriguez. There are several local races where voters are electing a mayor today, and that includes the town of Surfside, where former Mayor Charles Burkett is going against current Mayor Shlomo Danziger. And here are the numbers. 51% of the vote right now for Shlomo Danziger, 48.3% for former Mayor Charles Burkett, trying to return to the mayor's office.
Only 39 votes between them as of right now. There's also a town commissioner race in Surfside where voters choose up to 4 candidates. So right now we're showing you the 4 who have the highest percentage of votes. You see it's all very close. These people could all potentially be serving on the town council together. You've got Tina Paul, Fred Landsman, Gerardo Vildastegui, and Jeffrey Rose, all with 12 to 13% of the vote. Still with 0 precincts reporting, so it seems like the votes from today have not yet been tallied, but some of the early voting has already been calculated there in Surfside.
A dozen or so votes could make all the difference in that race. We want to go back live to CBS News Miami's Chelsea Jones at Miami-Dade election headquarters with a closer look at the Surfside mayoral race. Chelsea.
And it's really a high-profile race. This is a rematch, just like 2022 when Danziger and Burkett went head-to-head then, and at that time, only 35 votes separated them, so 39 votes today is significant. But over in that town, they are electing an entirely new governing body, a mayor, 4 commissioners. You just showed them that results there, but this is significant because current mayor Shlomo Danziger, that is facing against Burkett, and Burkett was actually the mayor when the Champlain Towers fell back in 2021, which killed 98 people. Now, this election, Burkett says his focus, though, is going to be preserving the town from major development, tackling crime, traffic, and public safety, as well as making town hall and those commission meetings more welcoming for residents. Now, Danziger does have some similar policies that he's advocating for. That includes public safety, but he's also talking about responsible development and homeowners' rights. Now, as for those town commission seats, there are 10 candidates vying for those 4 available seats. And like you just mentioned, some of those names, Tina Paul, Ruben Cotto, are former commissioners trying to win back their seats. And obviously, like you said, not many precincts reporting right now, but we'll keep you updated as those numbers do roll in. For now, we're live outside of Miami-Dade election headquarters. I'm Chelsea Jones, CBS News, Miami.
All right, Chelsea, thank you for that. And our team coverage continues now in Broward County, where Lauderdale-by-the-Sea is also electing a mayor tonight. Let's take a look. It looks like all the votes have been counted there, at least when you look at the precincts reporting 100%. When you look at the website from Broward County, it says 3 of 3 precincts reporting. Remember, these are small municipal elections, with Edmund Malkoon with 40.3% of the vote, Ann Marchetti with 35%, and Buzz Oldacre with 24.7%. So it looks like Malkoon ahead with 101 votes above his next opponent.
Well, voters there are also electing 2 commissioners. Here's a look at the race for seat 3, District 1. John Graziano has 58% of the vote with 1,089 votes. Howard Goldberg has 41.6% with 776 votes.
And a look now at the race for seat 4, District 2 Commissioner in Lauderdale-by-the-Sea. Richard DiNapoli with a commanding lead there, 61.2% over Kenneth Brenner with 38.8%, a 417 vote lead for that seat 4 District 2 Commission seat in Lauderdale-by-the-Sea.
All right, let's go back to CBS News Miami's Joan Murray, who's in Lauderdale-by-the-Sea. And Joan, not only is Lauderdale-by-the-Sea that beautiful picture that we put up of the beach on our newscast, but there have been some big stories coming out of Lauderdale-by-the-Sea in recent years. One involves that pier, and the other one was a tragedy involving a little girl.
That's right, and that's still fresh. The tragedy of the 7-year-old Sloan Mattingly, who died just a month ago here. She and her brother were digging a hole in the sand. They got trapped, they got buried in the sand, and tragically, 7-year-old Sloan Mattingly died. She was visiting from out of town. So that opened up this whole discussion, kind of put Lauderdale-by-the-Sea on the map, in the spotlight, nationally and even internationally, because it's a town that has never had lifeguards full time. So this opened this whole debate. Should we have lifeguards here? Should we not? It's a cost. There's also some liability issues that have come up. So that was a question on the minds of a lot of voters, and that question was put to a lot of the candidates who were running here for mayor and also the town commission seats. There has been no decision on that lifeguard matter. In fact, there is a study being done right now, and also they are waiting for the Broward Sheriff's Office final results on the cause of death before they're going to make a decision. But it is going to come back before this new commission, and they will entertain that discussion of whether to hire lifeguards full time. So let's take a look again at this mayoral race. It pit 2 longtime commissioners against Ann Marchetti, who is a newcomer, very involved in civic activities. We realize results are still coming in. It looks like Malkoon does have a lead in that race. Just a short time ago, I talked to Richard DiNapoli. He's well known in Republican circles. He is a Broward Republican official with the party, so he is very well known. I asked him what he would be looking at should it looks like he is going to win that seat, and he said that he will be looking at the lifeguard issue as well as some other issues, but he does want to keep growth down. A big thing in Lauderdale-by-the-Sea is about the height limit here. Let's take a listen to a resident. I talked to a longtime resident. She's been here 25 years and follows all the happenings in the town, and here's what she had to say about what was on voters' minds today.
They're voting on the heights, they're voting on the pier, they're voting on development, and whether they want the town to stay the same or make changes.
Make changes. So again, this will be a brand new day when this commission is sworn in April. Reporting live in Lauderdale-by-the-Sea, Joan Murray, CBS News, Miami.
Okay, Joan Murray, thank you for that live update, and we will be right back. Welcome back to our CBS News Miami Voters Decide stream special.
On a national level, the stage is set now for former President Donald Trump and President Biden to rematch come November. But Florida's role of being the swing state, we're no longer purple. It seems like we're pretty much red.
We have Jim DeFede back, and what are the Democrats doing about that?
So I guess one of the things that I find interesting is this is the 8th presidential election I've covered in Florida since I moved here in 1991. This is the first time in all those elections where we weren't a pivotal swing state, where we weren't in play. So I think a lot of us have to get used to not being the pretty girl at the ball anymore. We're not in demand. So what are the Democrats supposed to do to try to come back? That was one of the things. Democrats will still say, "Oh, we're a swing state. We're a swing state." I talked to Nikki Fried. I told her I didn't think we're a swing state anymore. I'm pretty sure we're a red state. Let's play here. We'll play now what she had to say in response to that.
No, Florida right now, and has consistently been one of those still battleground states, which is what the president has been talking about as he travels the country, including all of the surrogates across the nation, knowing that Florida has to be in play. Because if you're going to take back democracy for the whole country and make sure that it's preserved, you got to come to the belly of the beast, which is here in the state of Florida.
Unfortunately, the belly of the beast has swallowed the Democratic Party. So we're being digested right now. The Democratic Party is now being digested through that system.
We should mention there's a lot of independents also in Florida.
There are, and that accounts for some of the shift, as you have some Democrats and Republicans shifting to independent. Look, really, the reason why the swing has been so dramatic, as we pointed out earlier, Democrats used to have almost a 600,000 vote advantage. They're now down by almost 900,000 votes. Look, there's a lot of reasons for it. Republicans, particularly during COVID, kept registering voters. Registered. Democrats stopped. They stayed home. They didn't do it. Yeah. There also has been no investment in the infrastructure here in Florida for the Democratic Party, while the Republican has spent a lot. And we can't forget, Donald Trump has had a huge impact on Florida, and so has Ron DeSantis in driving home and pushing. And the only thing that we're going to have of interest to really watch locally is, will Dade County go red in a presidential election? It went red 2 years ago for the first time in decades. Will it go red again in a presidential election?
It went red for Ron DeSantis.
It went red for DeSantis. In 2016, Hillary won Miami-Dade by 300,000 votes. Joe Biden won it by just 60,000 votes. And now we're going to see what he does this time around.
All right, Jim, I'm sure we can go for hours. We're going to do this again in August and then again in November. But right now we want to take one more look at the Florida GOP presidential primary numbers. Looks like maybe that graphic is popping up for us right now, with Donald Trump with 80.6% of the vote, leading by 707,000 votes here in the state of Florida.
And thank you for tuning in this half hour for our Voters Decide primary streaming special.
For more on these races, you can find us streaming 24 hours a day on the CBS Miami app. Have a great night.